Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Good old Soundbox.
Soundbox. Tell them about Soundbox, Logan.
A lot of people miss the old Soundbox. So I'm hearing, um,
Mm.
going back and forth with uh, different jams and different spans of time between now and then. Um,
There's been a lot of jams.
been a lot of
I
jams,
mean, no one.
but nothing like the Soundbox. I don't think. I don't know, or I haven't been to anything like it.
What is the
Uh,
difference?
Soundbox was like Soundbox wasn't just a jam. It was like a spiritual event. It was like a spiritual cleansing.
Spiritual
Um,
cleansing. It was for me.
it was like an awakening. It was like something you wake up to, and you find yourself in a space where you're just doing whatever, and you're kind of more free and more encouraged to do whatever, um, whether it's quote unquote good or not. Um, but I ended up at Soundbox with through the line of um, Mr. Nathan Harris, who's a guitar player in the
Pretty good guitar
pretty
player, I'll
good
tell you that
guy,
much.
pretty good guy, pretty all around. But he invited me out to this event. We had met at a different jam down in Charlotte, and then he had me on a gig, um, singing. I sang for him up in Boone, and then invited me out to this Soundbox thing down in Charlotte, and I said, all right, well, I'll come out to that too, and that's where I met Chase and the rest of the Briarcliff community. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, so Soundbox, for people who don't know, has been a little bit since we've done one. I think the last one was in December in a movie theater. Um, Basically, we set up all the instruments so that there's enough for everyone to have at least a guitar, a keyboard, bass, drums, multiple microphones for if anyone plays anything that can just be mic'd or sings or talks or has anything to say whatsoever. The idea is that whatever we create, even if it's not music, whatever we create in the sound box is a collaborative, spontaneous thing. And the point of that was always to find the intention that grounds music. So I guess I have this theory that music originally almost had to just start from people gathering and catching a groove or singing or it was either a drum circle or vocal music or something like that had to have originated all this, and that was made just by what felt good to do, and then all the theory and craft of it, maybe not the craft of it entirely, comes
Yeah.
after the experience, and and sort of that necessarily is a reduction, and so
Yeah, it's
um,
kind of wild to think about like primitive man just gathering and making music that's just off the top of the head and not in any sort of structure or anything, and to be able to sit in on that as as a person, and to be like and to be blown away by it, and to say, "Oh, wow, I'm witnessing something that's different, that's like, this is affecting me in a different way than any other sort of thing I've ever experienced. Like, normally I'm having to hunt for food or pick berries or care for children or make fires, but then we gather, and there's a moment where we can um, make something that's so effective to human expression.
yeah. So the original position thing, that's when you think about like how things started. Like Thomas Hobbes would say, Oh, it was before there was a big government, a Leviathan. That was the name of his book. Um, Before there's a big government or whatever, life's nasty, brutish, and short. Before people are organized into societies and things, and that was like one of the first, like, hey, let's. Well, I guess the Bible's the first, or one of the first, the creation myths and creation stories. It was. We're always trying to say if we just get at how this all started,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that reveals something about what it's all for, what our purpose is. And so, what you think the originary position was, like the starting point was, will have an impact on how you feel about how things ought to be done now. Like, are you pure to the intention with which it started? Which is kind of how I came into wanted to do a jam. I was always in bands that had very composed music, um, and I didn't like jams at all. I hated them, and like most people, the things I hated, I didn't really understand, didn't know much about. I wasn't listening to a lot of Grateful Dead or Fish or any of these things. It was all that was all I listened to was like really composed music. But aside from like the Counting Crows, who were simple but had a very improvisational like live show, where the songs would take on a different form, and I did gravitate toward that. But the reason I turned to the jams was that I'd read Emmanuel Levinas and this whole idea of the saying in the said, that there's two elements of conscious experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's the knowable totality, that is the said. That's the account of everything is in the said. But then there's what I'm trying to say and what I've actually said. And so the saying, what I'm saying is intention. You begin every statement with an intention that is originary, just like the original position, that is unknowable. Again, just like the original position. We
Mm-hmm.
can't actually know what it was like at the beginning of time or the beginning of civilization,
Mm-hmm.
try as we might. Um, but that's not really any different than I can't know simultaneously what it's like at the bottom of a mountain and at the top of the mountain. That
Yeah.
our perspective is sort of where all this comes from. But the thing that grounds our actions, especially our actions toward other people, is this intention, what we're trying to say. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to make something that was not about what was said, but what we were all trying to say. We were all trying to make music for and with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think I remember the first time you came. Um, I had watched this movie. Is
Oh.
pointed to me as the sort of an existentialist movie. I think it was 1957, black and white. Isn't it black and white?
Yeah, it's black and white.
Yeah, The Incredible Shrinking Man.
Yeah.
And during one of the early jams, they were grooving on something, and I just got the microphone and started giving the plot of this movie.
You just started saying it.
Yeah, just saying
Like,
the plot of the movie without any, basically just exactly as it happened, as best I could
"'Cause I
remember.
was out on a boat and I was with my wife and I saw a strange mist out in the distance. And then the mist came to me but everybody else went away from the mist, but I was stuck on the deck of the boat
Mm.
and the mist engulfed me. And I was like, well, I know what that's about."
We don't want to give it away, but the guy shrinks.
Yeah, he starts shrinking and he just keeps getting smaller. It like starts out and he's like, "Oh man, I'm just a couple inches shorter, you know." And he like feels kind of, "Oh man, I lost a few inches. That's kind of weird. That doesn't normally happen." And
Then it gets all the way down to like he's fighting a spider. He's like smaller than the
yeah,
spider.
he's getting smaller. He becomes a circus freak, and then becomes microscopic. He's like looking at a, you know, he just keeps getting smaller.
But instead of
Daryl.
like turning around and there being something that happens from without that fixes all this or brings him back to regular size.
Yeah.
Instead, he gets all the way down to like some kind of nanoparticle level, and he says, "You know what? Other people will probably this mist that's going around the ocean. Other people are going to start shrinking, and I'm probably one of the first. So I'll just." I'm here as like the vanguard for the other people who are going to experience this, and so now,
Yeah, it's weird. He doesn't get it fixed. Like the movie just ends. Like he starts getting smaller, and it's like, oh crap, what am I gonna do? I don't know. I just keep getting smaller, and you think it's gonna like resolve itself some way, but no, he literally just stays small. He just keeps shrinking, and it's just like there's nothing you can do. And even if other people started shrinking, you wouldn't be able to find them. You're kind of stuck on your own.
right?
You're
Yeah,
just gonna shrink into
but I think the story he's
non.
telling himself is still the kind of myth we need to keep going. You have to find some sort of reason to be, and so at the end, it's like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that people are all going to shrink at the same rate to where they
Yeah,
would catch up to him. I mean,
because
so
yeah, as far as you can tell, there's no stopping point to it
right,
either. Like he's not gonna stop getting smaller.
right, but so yeah, so that film was. I watched it because it was like a. It was recommended in this book at the Existentialist Cafe. That is kind of a recap of existentialism in the 20th century, but it's got like this. It,
Cooking at the Cannonball Cafe. That's not how it goes.
no,
The Cannibal Cafe. That's another story.
but I don't know what that one is. I don't know anything about
Okay.
that.
Oh
I've
no,
heard
that
I've heard of it, but I haven't ever.
the Cannibal Cafe.
Yeah, I don't know.
that's that's a song that Wilson Morris wrote.
Oh,
That's Wilson's song.
oh, I was thinking you're talking about a movie. So,
No,
but also,
no, sorry. I'm just
I'm not that familiar with all the titles of those
interrupting
songs.
cow.
Here, I just always remember the dragons and the frogs
Interrupting cow. Moo.
and the voodoo
Alright.
vans. But
All right. What were you talking about?
oh, something about shrinking and how that's an
Are you talking about the Existentialist Cafe?
yeah, the Existentialist Cafe. So the thing about that is it kind of gives a lot of detail to the existentialists themselves and their life stories and how they came to know one another and be fascinated by this movement and philosophy. And that movie is like an example of how existentialism crept into film, because in existentialism and in phenomenology more broadly, the the situation is sort of what determines it. As Sartre puts it, existence precedes essence. You become who you are, as Nietzsche would say. You find yourself in a situation, and then that situation is in many ways the determining factor of who you are. For the incredible shrinking man, he finds himself in this situation where he's just fading into obscurity, and he has to find a
Messing with it.
yeah, it's fun to play with the thing, but yeah. But anyway, so I'm given the plot of this movie because and then you come up and you start singing the incredible shrinking man, the title, and then I'm like, oh, this is Yahoo has seen this movie, and
Chorus.
and I was like, I didn't think anyone would know what I was even talking about, I was and there you were, which you're apparently had watched plenty of Turner Classic Movies.
Uh-huh.
Why did you
Oh,
watch
yeah.
so much Turner Classic Movies?
'Cause I have old parents. That's the short answer.
That's a blessing.
Yeah. Old people.
That
Yeah, I
is
kind
a
of like
blessing.
that view. Just showing both people at once.
Yeah, but then I
People
can't hide.
Then you can't hide. Oh.
Every
Eh.
now and again. Every now and again, a fella's got to hide.
Okay.
All right. So you're at this Soundbox, and then at the time, I think by the time you'd come along, Oh, you came to the one where we premiered the
Yeah, the
documentary,
first one I came to, y'all showed the documentary.
which is here on
No,
YouTube.
yeah, it's like,
So Soundbox. It's from last year. I think came out in May last year. So we're about on the year of it. We made a little documentary about what Soundbox is. So if you want to see what it is and want to know what it is when it comes back, that's
yeah.
a pretty good example. The cat's in it. There's all
Oh wow. See, I haven't seen it, and I feel like I only watched it that one time.
oh yeah, yeah,
I was like, whoa, what? I don't know.
yeah.
It was a lot.
And then well, I was booking these shows on Saturdays at Legion Brewing, which was basically like a spillover of Soundbox at that time. I would take some whoever and throw them together on stage, and they would figure out how to make a 3 hour gig happen um, the same way. So you started coming to some of those, I think, looking to get on and play. And then I think the
Yeah.
first two you couldn't play because there was like a cancellation or something. I mean, like
I don't
it was
remember.
weather or something.
I feel like cancellation might have happened later, but I don't know. I feel like I remember playing at least maybe the second time I went. I remember maybe the first time I didn't play just because y'all had it booked out. Or maybe I just like sat in the corner and twiddled on a guitar.
Nothing like twiddling on a guitar.
That's what most guitar players do is they just twiddle on it.
It was really strange when we both were kind of at a loss what to say. We at the same rate. It was stressful.
What do you mean?
Our inhale was like the same rate just now.
Oh, I didn't notice.
I did. These VSX headphones are clear,
Clear,
very clear.
crystal clear.
Yeah. So eventually you started playing and you were jamming, and then I was like, "Hey, don't you have like solo material?" I was like, "Well, the band take a break. Why don't you play a solo song?" And you weren't really prepared to play, I guess that. But you broke out some old jazz song from the '30s. What was it?
Good old Moody's Mood. Moody's Mood for Love. I gotta say it louder to get it to switch.
Yeah.
James Moody. Moody's Mood. You can also find it's also an Amy Winehouse version.
Oh, really?
A bunch of people covered this song. It's like a classic standard, but it's very much like vocal acrobatics. Because it's like originally a saxophone solo. James Moody was a sax player, and he was covering I'm in the Mood for Love, which is a standard, and he was doing a sax version of that, and and went way too hard, and then a different guy came along and put lyrics to that song. He put it's like vocalese when people will take instrumental solos, learn it in scat, like whatever they did, and then they would put lyrics to it. And that's a great example of it. Moody's Mood for Love. Check it out. It's a great song.
So that was the first thing that struck me about you was you watched old movies and you knew old songs and you were 13 years younger than me.
Okay.
And so that was kind of interesting. But also the song is very difficult. So yeah, look it up. Yeah, so it was like this really difficult song, but you acted as if you were real bashful about playing it that time. So
Because I didn't know. I remember feeling like I didn't know if I should do an original or do a cover or do something. I was very much just like I don't know what to do. Because I hadn't been like gigging consistently at that point. Like
the mood was about to change.
yeah, I was kind of out of practice. I feel like at that time, I was just like on other things.
And you and Javier ended up doing a cover of like a Michael Jackson song, which for some reason never was went back to.
Yeah, we also did LOVE. L is for the way you look at me.
Yeah.
by Nat King Cole.
And so
But yeah, the Billie Jean, I think too.
yeah, I think it was Billie Jean. And then I want somebody to do to do Dirty Diana, but I thought that would have been one that that would have been good for Nathan and Javier to do.
I don't even. Is that a Michael Jackson song?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Dirty Diana.
and
Mm.
it's got like this hi hat is just kind of eccentric. It's I have to listen to it, but it's a really particular groove, but it's not like complicated. It's just got like so
Wow.
much emotion in the arrangement. And
Oh yeah.
it's a Quincy Jones,
Yeah.
just great players doing great things. But anyway, so I'm just trying to get some context on the Logan
Oh, okay.
Childers story for people who don't
On
know.
my story. Mm.
Yeah, and so then a little ways after that, I think I was having like a bit of a post gig meeting at one of the Saturday shows with a lot of the guys that were like regularly gigging with us, and I've said something about how we should try to figure out internships and because we as our company we do everything from live shows to recording to all that, and there's
Yeah.
just every phase of the thing we're trying to do, and so it would be a good internship. And then you said,
I was like standing there, and I was at this point. That was probably most of my nerves was my professor getting on to me about I didn't have an internship yet, and like it was like it had very specific criteria as to what I couldn't do remote, and like I had found a remote internship at the time, and I was like I can't do that. I was having to like figure that out, and then I was like standing there, and I was like, oh, he just said internship. I was like, well, I might as well do that.
and then you were the first person we ever have had as still the only person we've had as a college intern, but it worked out. You
Yeah.
got your credit here.
Yeah, I got my credit. I'm a full graduate. I got my bachelor's degree. She accepted the internship.
And and then now we've been working together since the internship, and you've got a record. We're figuring out how really we're
So-
kind of on the. I guess we're having a bit of a debate about how we want to release it, whether it should be something more. Maybe it's one of those things you say. Maybe in the comments, tell us what do you think's better: a bunch of singles, music videos, alternate versions. Is there a way that maybe it ought to be that's not just a big drop that people forget about in a couple of weeks, or is it something that you feel like you can get more into a body of music if you get a bunch of it at once that's meant to be listened to together? I know I've been both ways. Sometimes I listen to
Yeah.
a song or two from a project, and sometimes I really am into an album and it'll be on repeat, but not as much as it used to be before streaming. And all.
Yeah, it's harder to formulate an album as something that's just because of the nature of streaming. There's just so many different songs, and most people are gonna find you in a playlist or something where it's like it is in isolation. So,
And this is
I don't know. So
sort of what your background is in is marketing. You ended up with a marketing
Yeah.
degree.
marketing, music marketing, to say the least. Music industry studies, Appalachian State.
But
Great day.
we just find ourselves in the situation does determine what we do, and like most of the things that we know as the music industry are really just the last 20th century, and and the distribution model they had there, and then now we've switched, and things are all in flux, and technology changes every day, and figuring out what a career in music looks like. Also,
Mhm.
And beyond that, like what an artist looks like. What is an artist uh,
Yeah.
responsible for conveying in this ecosystem where you and look, just for sake of argument, we got two people who there are people like this that are mostly, we say, work from home, or and they're on their they're on their devices, and that's most of their outside interaction. Those two people have a completely, they can live in the same town and have a completely different set of experiences every day. And we've never lived in a time like that
Hmm.
where your experience may not map on to someone else's at all. What you think politically or economically or religiously, any of these things, you may have a completely different diet than a person who lives around the corner from you. And it's just hard to know what will connect. But I think this is an advantage, but I don't know. Do you agree with that assessment of
That we live in a distantly removed society where everyone has a different experience. Is that
yes?
what you're saying? I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. For sure. I think people can very much. It's easier to live in a bubble now and not see any sort of different perspective, um, just by the nature of the internet and things of that sort. Was there a question there? I feel like I'm
No, I was
mixing up
just
something.
making sure I wasn't way off base.
Oh no, I nah.
Um, so so then I think paradoxically, it may seem, I think a lot of the issue with what artists are doing is they're trying to reference what's been said instead of worrying about what they're trying to say. What are you saying? Not how can you rearrange things that have been said in a way that will map onto other people's experience. One of the reasons
Mm-hmm.
is this is even harder to do now than it has ever been before. I mean, used to, there was a hit song or a hit TV show, you knew other people had access to that, other people had experienced it, it played at the school dance, it was on Full House, all these different things. So you could make a
Yeah.
connection to something out there. Now you have to convey your intention. I'm here to entertain you. I'm here to tell you something beautiful, to paint a picture that you can experience. Um, you're doing that, but you have no referent to what they think is true as a matter of the account. We're in a
Yeah. There's so many different things you can be interested in. It's not just limited to whatever's on cable TV or whatever. There's an infinite bounty of content and media to experience.
so I think the path for an artist today, and actually Terry Funk. It always go back to this. The time when Terry Funk gave me my wrestling name, Cauliflower Brown, and we he was given a seminar, that weekend, and he was talking about how he thought that the pro wrestler of the future would have to be able to do like multiple things at one time to hold people's attention because they have access to anything in their hand. And
Mm.
you know you, um, I think we often tend to limit the amount of things that we think are competing for another person's attention when we're trying to get their attention. And it's not just the other bands in the area. It's not. It's also the other bands that they can listen to on their phone, the memes they can look at instead of looking at the stage, the earbuds they can put in instead of listening to what's around them.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, you're to really capture someone's attention. Terry Funk, he thought that you would have to be able to do something, and I should say the late Terry Funk. Now he died a couple years ago. I think it's been a couple years. Time flies so fast. I always feel like things are longer ago than
Hmm.
might have been. But anyway, this idea it resonated with me, and I think there's just a commitment that it takes now to truly being there with the people that you're there with. Um, that um, that urgency that this is the one thing you can't get elsewhere is the thing to lean into, and and also just a certain a belief that the artist that you're listening to is authentic in some way. I don't know. It used to be a big thing that someone was authentic, and I don't know
Hmm.
necessarily what that means.
Yeah, I think it's important to be real. Um, mm,
What do you mean by real?
true to yourself, I guess. Ah, what was the other part of that? I'm just, I'm
That,
distracted. There's too many things going on, like that laptop's about to die and stuff.
well, we don't need the laptop.
We don't need it.
No. Well, unless no, I don't guess so.
Okay.
But yeah, and there's not really. This is the first one of these things, just to try to get it off and get it off the ground, and just to get used to doing it.
Yeah, you're saying to be able to do multiple things,
Yeah. Now
to be multiple things.
it's almost like Paul, be all things to all men. Like it's like you're in it, we're in a time where like the different things that you may choose to brand yourself with have radically different connotations for people in your immediate circle, and so I think this ability that I was really trying to hone in on with Soundbox is that ability to sort of be all things to all people. Like, what do I need to be in this moment to make this jam more fun? To bring to make the person over there who's not smiling smile. All right, leaning into that immediacy, the now, the thing as we're saying it, not as we recount it or extrapolate away from the things that we've reduced into a matter of record and then projected. Oh, I want to be this kind of artist. I want to be a grunge singer, or I want to be like J. Cole, or I want to be like Nat King Cole, whatever. Like by picking something out there to aim at, I think we're sort of making a mistake, because
Sure.
the reason that those people cut through was because they weren't necessarily emulating anyone directly. They had gotten to a point where, yeah, they obviously, all of us are picking up mannerisms and vocabulary and things from others,
Yeah.
um, but it had become, as you'd say, like second nature at that point. All the swirling influences sort of were ready to hand for that person in a way that it was just natural that they could say exactly what they wanted to say when they wanted to say it, or at least in
Mhm.
their seminal work they were doing that. No
Mhm.
one's doing things perfectly all the time.
Yeah. You said a lot there.
I did.
Which I agree with. Yeah, like you as an individual, like to sort of get, well, these things we think of individuals as legendary, or we idolize these people a little bit, and I think that's a bit of a loss, because yeah, it's like the idolization of like the great man. We have like this image of like the great person who
The
pulled himself
Rock.
who pulled himself up by his own bootstraps and became great and like did these things, But I think it's kind of looking back, at the end of the day, they were just people who had a message, who had something in particular to say, and so it's a little less about like, you know, being great so much as it is how, how can I find the message that I want to send out, and what is that message, and how can I convey it as clearly as possible.
Right. Well, there's because the great man, or whatever, like you
However you
said,
want to.
yeah, these idols,
Yeah.
none of them are unassailable in the end, and no one will stand up to scrutiny. Everyone has
Yeah.
something that would appall, something in their life that they're remorseful over, or that or even if it's just how they feel when they get up in the morning,
Yeah.
and so like there's that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
What does exist is a small goodness, and that's really what the great people did, is they gave a lot of small goodnesses to people over the years. Their song was just perfect for getting in your car after your shift, smoking a cigarette and singing along about your heartbreak. It was just the right groove that had you dancing with your loved one to their song. It was all these small goodnesses that add up in the aggregate
Mm-hmm.
to someone being thought of as great. I think if we aim at because right now, I won't. Um, right now, there's still small goodness in the Gaza Strip. There's still people being pulled out of rubble and given water, regardless of in the horrors of war, in the midst of all of that. There's always small goodness there, and that small goodness is what we should be aiming at as people, I think, but especially as artists. There's someone at the show that really just sometimes they need an escape. I used to not really be uh, into the escapist aspect of art, but I think I get it a little more now.
Hmm.
But sometimes they're there for an escape. Sometimes they're there to find some truth, some truth of love, or something like that in the moment. But it's the small goodnesses. That's why Soundbox is what it was. That's why I run the shows the way that I run them. That's why the people who are on the shows are on the shows. The trying to keep some fidelity to this idea that who we are is who we are for other people, and if we can make those small moments good, then that's what we ought to be doing.
Sure. Yeah. Hmm.
So anyway, you got a record. What would you say about your own music?
What would I say about my own music? Um, I write music just for just for the emotion of it. There's a lot of times not a great overlying meaning behind it. Like I didn't start writing lyrics to to tell like some great amazing story, or write poems. I just wrote it to express something in particular, like just some particular emotion that I wanted to share.
Like the music and the
So
melody. Sometimes when you introduce that song, you talk about how the melody, but sort of is where the song starts for you.
yeah,
Uh, Talk.
melody is something. It's like it's a language that we can communicate in. That goes beyond words. So starting with that has become what builds a song for me. Um, and trying to make those as as poignant as I can, and I worry less about the lyrics in some aspects. Still, it comes with the problem of I end up sticking with lyrics that might not make sense or don't really aren't really saying anything
Mhm.
because I'm so attached to the sound of something more than the word. Um, so, but I think there's something for the there was something else you were talking about, and I can't remember now.
Well, I was
Move
just
very quick,
the
and
the
then
the melody and the I was just thinking about how the melody and the emotion, um, you know, all the melody, all the intervals in Western music we have like a sort of a subconscious association with. We've
yeah,
heard
for sure.
we've heard enough, you know, major chords associated with a certain feeling, and especially certain progressions of those chords and stuff that that give us an immediate like sort of context,
Yeah,
and then I guess you're twisting and turning all those associations in someone else's head when you're writing a song.
yeah. It's I think we have a lot of power as musicians to influence people's moods, and so I try and write songs that make people feel good. You know, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make something that has makes somebody feel better, or sometimes if I'm really into it, I write something that makes people think or makes people consider just some strange aspect. Because I started writing lyrics with this idea of I'm just gonna write random words. I'm not even gonna worry about having to make sense. I'm just gonna have words
You know,
and just and
it's
then just start from there.
it's funny you say that because you know, Wilson told me he was doing that, and at one point at least, and then as he was doing it, he realized after the fact that a lot of the songs would make a certain kind of sense. They would be more coherent than he even intended them to be. But I think he was trying to
Yeah.
do the Zappa thing, the Frank Zappa thing. Um,
See, I like Frank Zappa, but I don't like Frank Zappa's music. So that
I never have gotten into it enough to know how I feel about it. I just saw some documentary clips or something, and whatever famous picture is of him on a toilet. And
I haven't seen it.
oh,
I don't
really?
recall
It's
Frank Zappa on the toilet.
It used to be in some club I would go to. It might have been in Greenville.
Some club.
Yeah, well, not a
Mm.
dance club, but like a music venue.
Mm-hmm.
Some music venue had a picture of him. Like
Just the picture.
yeah,
Okay,
and
of him on the toilet.
yeah. I don't. That's why I remember that.
No, you were talking about something before you asked me about myself, and now I can't remember what it was. I had some idea of.
It's talking about the
Oh,
small goodness, intention, community. Like those are the self is a sound. You only know about its echo. The sort of stuff that I'm always talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the
Maybe I had nothing to say about it.
I mean, the point of what I'm doing to me is to sort of come up with a way that people can. Well, it's not really come up with a way. It's explain to people that there's meaning to their life, and that meaning is all around them. That it's immediate, and you don't need a story. You don't need to fit into some grand narrative. That your
Yeah.
meaning is going to fall upon you like a Damascus Road experience fell upon Paul. But it requires looking to do this sort of small goodness for other people, seeing what they need in their face and reacting to it.
Yeah, and I guess it's like I've explored a lot of different, and I've heard a lot of different ideas from people about, like thinking in Zen terms or detaching yourself from the world. And I guess what you're saying kind of goes against that idea a
Right.
little bit, where you're saying we should be engaged with the world and
Right.
try and live life here on earth as a human, not like, yeah, detaching from society or detaching from the world.
Not waiting for the millennium. You're not waiting on anyone to come back and save you. You're not waiting to go on to another
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
You're here in this life, and you should be very concerned about this life, because whatever the other beliefs you have, I'm not saying don't believe in an afterlife. I'm saying that the even on all the belief systems where you're dealing with an afterlife, the afterlife is determined by your actions now.
Yeah.
So how so it really goes all the way back to like a Saint Augustine quote. On my on my stupid Facebook, for my religious views, it's always it's said for as long as I can remember. Well, what do I love when I love my God? And that's a Saint Augustine reference. He asks himself that question in his confessions, and comes to the realization that, if there's this all powerful, omnipotent God, which he believed there was, um, that the only way to serve him, to love him, was to love other people who needed something, and to be
Yeah.
there and for God's people.
Yeah. Which is not a common belief. I don't think.
Well, I think it's
That
right
that
there in all the religions up front, but
that loving God is loving other people.
it's all there up
I feel like
front.
that's been lost.
Yeah.
The,
Well, it's nothing about the belief systems so much themselves as it is about our egos. G.K. Chesterton has a great quote. It's it's not that Christianity's been tried and found not to work. It's that Christianity's been found difficult and not tried.
mm-hmm.
And like there is so much of that, like the ego or the self. I'm using that synonymous in a sense. Like
Okay.
the self of the account is the ego. Um, the I, the that forms out of trauma. So it's like when sometimes when I get mad, I like puff up and I'm like, oh, you can't talk to me. It's a response to um, okay, this delicate thing in here, you don't get to know that it's delicate. So I'm going to put up this system of personality traits and what manner of dressing, standing, speaking, all of these things to shield my vulnerable self. Because I'm ultimately, or not I, but consciousness, is invisible in the sense it's invisible to you, my consciousness,
Yeah.
and so the ego is this way of shielding ourselves from it, and that creeps in no matter what you fundamentally believe about the overall structure of the world or something, like whether there's a heaven, hell, a God, um, what the rules are to this experience that we're having. All that is in some ways irrelevant to the experience of living and how you must apply it. And so, like to you ultimately can never project the your inner experience to anyone else, but you can feel connected to them in their frailty, because beneath the exterior that I'm putting up and the exterior that you're putting up and everyone else, behind all that shell is just so much mortality.
Yeah.
And the thing that really is truly your own is your own eventual death.
Yeah.
And so to realize, oh, beyond that guy who's my boss or person who thinks they're a big deal or whatever, that there's just the creeping knowledge that this doesn't last forever. Why are you so worked up about the thing that you want that they have? You wish they would do the right thing with the thing they have, or whatever it is. All these different debates we have. You're like, well, because I only have so much time to do what it is I want to do, and if you're not going to share, then I have to take it, or whatever. All these conflicts arise from the ultimate knowledge and the immediate knowledge of your mortality.
Yeah.
So the response to that ultimately leads to growth. As we were listening to that Schelling thing yesterday, German idealist, that I hadn't really looked into too much. He's like the precursor to Hegelian thought, and I guess therefore Marxist thought, and the today. But anyway, the growth comes from love, which is concern about this, concern for their mortality. So instead of worried about protecting myself, I worry about what I can give.
Yeah.
And that creative space, if the most creative force is love, then that's what we have to lean into when we're making music, not
Sure.
not the not saying that music that doesn't do that isn't popular, because it can be.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
lot of people who are just in trauma and reveling in their trauma, and they'll ride that until the wheels fall off. It does happen, but it's actually out of concern for that we should make something that might
Yeah.
derail that train.
Yeah, because I've heard you say this, and I've heard it a few other places. Like, death gives meaning to life.
Yeah,
Death becomes.
it defines the story.
Yeah.
I mean, any story, how it ends. You could have been just a dude who, man, that was weird that he knew that movie, and but it's only now, at this point, farther along, and seeing all the wonderful, we hadn't even mentioned all the wonderful collaborations you've done as a part of
Oh, yeah.
Briarcliff sessions, both live and the performances we record and post and all that, and the amount of impact you've had in the community since you've been here is the only reason I even remember. I probably, I may have already forgotten about that had it not been for now. Start is good on this, and Nausea, he talks about this, the end always defining which things were important along the way, and we don't know until, but okay. So the difference in living your life and in writing a story is that when you're writing a story, you have an end in mind, and then you include all the relevant details. The problem is when you're living your life is you don't know which details are relevant at the time,
Yeah.
which ought to, if you really think about it, inspire you to be good to everyone, because you don't know who anyone is. You don't know how important they are or will be.
Yeah. It's also like in the story I'm reading or whatever.
The Unbearable Lightness of Being.
Yeah.
By Milan Kundera.
They talk about those like subtle coincidences, those small incidental things that are beautiful in the moment when you take the moment to look at it, and it can be viewed as, oh, it's romantic, or it's like some artistic way to see the coincidence of it was 6 o'clock and I was born on the 6th, or when I found my love, when I found the love of my life, it was 6 o'clock.
Oh, you were in
whatever.
You were in room number 6.
Yeah, and
I get off at 6.
Yeah,
right. Like
yeah.
these and it's true. Justin, who edited and directed the documentary, he told me one time about this. He's like, yeah, so many relationships are just based on ultimately nothing. It's like, oh, you talk to a girl who's cute, and you're like, hey, you like the Smiths? Oh, I love the Smiths. And it is some arbitrary thing. Like, how big of a part of your life is just liking the same band? But when you feel drawn to someone, when there's an openness to someone, and you feel like it's then you're looking for any arbitrary thing. That's not necessarily what Milan Kundera is talking about, but that's another way that it happens. It's like, it's all accident in a way.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been at this for an hour.
Yeah, so I'll put a bow on it. I guess I wanted to let me tie some of the things together. I think there was a concept that that's core to this that maybe got left out. Oh,
Rip it.
yeah, rip it, pop the tab. Um, the so you know just about the gosh. No, it's like I had it until it was like time to wrap it, and then I was like,
Oh,
but yeah, um, all these things, these sort of ways of making meaningful experiences for other people. Um, the thing is, okay, here's the rock bottom, I guess, core of it all is that we're all hostages to one another, and that there's who I am is who I am for you, and I guess where I was trying to get to is ultimately the meaning of life must be transcendence. The thing about transcendence is you can only transcend from the same to different. So a lot of the most probably popular philosophy thing right now um, is Stoicism. People are into Stoicism because of Ryan Holiday and some other influencers and things. Um, and they point out this problem because the hedonic treadmill is essentially a transcendence problem. I'm thirsty, and then I drink some water, and I'm not thirsty. But now I've become identified with not being thirsty, and I have to go out and just wait a little while, and I'll become thirsty again. The same becomes the different, and then the different becomes the same. And it's just sort of a cycle that you never truly become different and remain different. Because once you become different, the doer is sort of undone by the doing. And so the only possible solution to this to truly transcend is to find the difference that remains different. And that will always be the invisible world of another person
mm,
that you are a hostage in. And so who I am for you is my transcendence. Who I
yeah,
am for myself is just more of the same.
yeah, because it's invisible for you who you are to me.
Right.
You know.
And so
Um,
all I can do is guess that I need to do better and try harder in a sense.
yeah.
Um,
Well, like the rebuttal to that is if we're always living for other people, we we since we can't control them, we're bound to be unhappy, right? I can't since I can't
we
since I can't know,
well, I think we begin. Well, see,
I'm lost in anxious thought of what might be what I think is.
well, this is because people are so traumatized that they forget that originally they enjoyed living.
Mm.
So we enjoy living in and of itself. It's actually because we enjoy it so much that it's that I'm enjoying bread that makes it clear what I should do when a hungry child approaches. We live from enjoyment first, then there's this trauma being told no. Oh, nope, you can't stay in your mother's womb and have all your needs met by this fluid swirling around you in this sort of oceanic experience. It's like, an isolation chamber or whatever. Like you can't continue to be breastfed. You can't continue sleeping in your parents' bed. You can't continue wearing your diapers, your training wheels, et cetera, et cetera. These traumas take you away from the thing you enjoy and also sort of spur an antagonism with the others in your life.
Sure.
And so the ultimate path is to realize what it is you enjoy, getting good at that thing, and finding the people who need you to do that for them. So the enjoyment comes on the front end. It's very easy to lose that. But how we keep people from losing that enjoyment is by not traumatizing them so much. So it's kind of a dual uh, dictum there. It has,
Stop traumatizing people.
yep,
Quit it.
that's our show.
This has been a wild ride.
Thank you, Rip It.
All right.